I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, Judy Miller. Judy is the Environmental Program Manager for the Urbana Park District, and she's been with them since 1983. She manages the Anita Purvis Nature Center, which we all know and love, the Meadowbrook Interpretive Center, and the Friendship Grove Natural Playscape, as well as generally the parks and natural areas. She's been involved in multiple major projects with the Park District over the years, including the Nature Center expansion, the Prairie Restoration Project, and master plan development. She served on several agencies with several entities, including being board member of the Environmental Education Association of Illinois and the National Association of Environmental Education. She received her master's degree in science education from Northern Illinois University and a Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Studies and Biology from Hiram College in Hiram, Ohio. With that, Judy.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. To start off, I think Amanda's going to do a poll so we can kind of find out where people are in this world of technology. So if you can take a moment to respond to the questions.
Did everybody see that? Okay.
Let's give it a couple more minutes, a couple more seconds. Looks like we have about split between how many have used iNaturalist. I'm hoping to show you that today. We have a large majority that have not participated in a BioBlitz. So I'll be glad to share with you our experiences and what we have found and what we have benefited from that. And then it looks like most people have used some type of technology to identify plants and animals. So that's good information to have. You want to close it now, Amanda? All right. All right, so why is it not forwarding? I think when you did something, let me try sharing again because it's not forwarding. Gotta love technology. I'm gonna stop and start again. Nope, still doesn't want to do it. Is everybody, are they able to see my screen?
Yes.
Right, I don't know why it's not going forward. It worked fine yesterday. One more time, let me close. All right, are you able to see it now?
No.
No, okay. But it's forwarding, so that's a good sign. Let's try it again. Okay, sorry about the technology. Who knows what that was? So the first question that comes up in our minds, at least when the Park District was considering a BioBlitz, was which sites we should use. And we selected Busey Woods for several reasons. Some of this may be things that you already know, but hopefully not all of it. First, what is a BioBlitz? It's basically a snapshot in time of an ecosystem. It can be a contest, and it can most often be an exploration of what is there, what lives in this site. It's usually for a short period of time. Usually a 24-hour period of time is standard, but I've seen BioBlitzes that have gone on for a semester or for a month, and we'll talk about one of those in a little while. It usually involves having scientists with expertises in a variety of species collection. But we also want to include volunteers, teachers, students, the community, especially if that site is in a community area. It can be any size. Busey Woods is only 59 acres, but we have citywide BioBlitzes that are going on regularly now as well. With the advent of smartphones, technology, and the apps that they provide, BioBlitzes have become much more accessible to the general public. People have pretty excellent cameras on their phones and have ways of finding out what they are seeing with their lenses. And then even more importantly, the data that is collected using one of those apps, especially the iNaturalist, is shared with the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. And this is an open source free database that scientists and policymakers use around the world to get a picture of what the ecosystems look around the world. So a little bit of history about Busey Woods and why it lends itself to a study of its ecosystem. As I said, it's a 59-acre of what was the Big Grove, which was a 10-square-mile area along the Saline Branch and the Salt Fork River. It extended from Urbana to Rantoul, and then between those two water sources. When the settlers came, they gravitated toward these wooded areas for resources to build their homes and the like. And it was a familiar ecosystem from them coming from the East Coast. Prairie was unknown to them. Busey Woods, which is owned by the Park District now, Brownfield Woods and Trelease Woods, which are university properties, and most recently Weaver Park's Commissioner Grove, are the only surviving large parcels of the Big Grove that exist in the area. So historically, it has some significance. Busey Woods was on the western edge of the prairie, of the grove, and so it would have had fire as a regular management, and it would have had flooding because of the creek that was going through it. So when the settlers arrived, again, as I said, they would gravitate toward the wooded areas, and in 1909 and 1910, the Saline Branch, which used to flow through the woods, was channeled, and about 6 miles was taken off of the creek to straighten it basically into a ditch to allow water to convey away from Urbana and areas around Urbana that were flooding, similar to the project that was done for the Boneyard Creek. As a result, the area where the water went through the woods became seasonal ponds or ephemeral ponds. These ponds are sourced from runoff and from snowmelt. There is no ready access of water coming to it. It doesn't have a spring or anything, and it typically dries up. So we'll have flooded conditions in the spring to the early summer, and then somewhere in the mid to late summer into fall, we usually have a drying period. And that drying period is very important for that ephemeral ecology. Animals such as this fairy shrimp that's in the center of the screen rely on that dry period for their eggs to mature, and then when there's a new spring, filling of the ponds, then the population reoccurs. Everything that lives in the pond has to be able to survive when there's no water. So they either finish their life cycle before the water is gone, or they leave the pond, most likely through metamorphosis, to live their life from being a nymph into an adult, such as the dragonfly. between 1910 and 1990, the woods was used and abused. It was a home for dairy cows and horseback riding. There's evidence specifically in the south end of the woods of extensive logging. In the late 1960s, the Busey family were looking at developing it into an industrial park of some type. And in order to do that, they would have to level the land and fill in those areas where the depressions where the stream used to go through and then where the ponds were. At the same time, Lincoln Square Mall was being planned, and that mall was put in a neighborhood that had to be torn out, and they needed some place to take that rubble. So when you go walking through Busey Woods, you'll find the staircase that go nowhere, or a slab of cement that was a sidewalk, or a chimney. There was never any houses in Busey Woods. There was evidence of Indians that were there hunting, but they never lived there. So they dumped all that rubble in the woods. And then in 1971, for a variety of reasons that aren't really evident to us, the Busey family gave up on that project and actually moved away and donated it to the University of Illinois Foundation. The foundation wasn't quite as interested in the property. Remember, they have Turles and Brownfield woods, which are pristine ecosystems. They've never been logged and never had grazing or collection of any kind. And so they actually sent scientists out to check out Busey Woods in the early 70s, and those scientists came back with a report that basically said the woods had no ecological value, it had been severely scarred, and that because the Park District was talking to the university about using the property as a teaching tool, they had been approached by Anita Parker Purvis, who was an UPDAC member, one of our first advisory committee members, who came to the Park District and suggested that we might consider getting into the environmental education field. And so the Park District got a 20-year lease from the University of Illinois for $1 a year to use the woods as a teaching tool. Anita died just a few months after the lease was signed. She had breast cancer, and at her request, the Anita Purvis Nature Center was built in 1979 in her memory to be a vehicle to have a place for people to start and then go out and explore Busey Woods. So between 1974 and 1990-91, the Park District's hands were kind of tied on what we could actually do in the woods as far as management. So invasive species like honeysuckle and buckthorn moved into the site. In 1991, we secured a grant from the IDNR department to purchase the woods from the university, and at that point, the Park District began actively managing Busey Woods. So why have a BioBlitz? The question we had some studies of plants done periodically through the woods, and we had bird inventories on a regular basis, but we really didn't know what was there, not since the 1940s. And so we thought, okay, these are our goals. How many species can we find in that 24-hour period? We wanted to bring scientists back into the woods and to get their reevaluation of the woods, to get them engaged in this local site. There were some scientists that used the woods for studies, but not a large percentage of the community of scientists that we have from the Natural History Survey and from the University of Illinois were regular visitors of the woods. We also wanted to provide an opportunity where the public and the scientists could engage together, where the public can come and see, what do these scientists do? How do they get their information? Why do they do it in the first place? And then we also wanted to celebrate what we believed was a diverse ecosystem since the Park District had been managing it. For our 2019 BioBlitz, all of those goals were still in place, but specifically we wanted to do some comparison. We wanted to look at a different time of year and see what was common that we found and what did we find that was different. So I'll walk through our 2005 BioBlitz. It was held on June 25th, 26th in 2005 from noon to noon. The temperature on that day was 99 degrees. And we'll see in some of the data how that affected some of our data. The coordination for the event began at least a year ahead of time. We pulled some scientists together to see if there was first interest. We could not do this by ourselves. We can't manage our natural areas by ourselves. We rely heavily on volunteers and heavily on the scientific community to help us manage these sites. So we did a lot of feelers out. We put together a team of scientists that were interested and had helped coordinate to the Allerton BioBlitz that had happened a few years before. We sought firm commitments from bioscientists. This, in both of our BioBlitzes, is a challenge. The scientists don't always know their schedules. And we were still getting commitments from scientists up to the actual day of the event. We wanted to put together scientists and volunteer teams to allow the public to have this opportunity to work side by side with the scientists and see what it was they did. We used the Allerton's data list. Now this is pre-apps. This is pre having something like iNaturalist. So we had a very involved data list, and we had one scientist from the Natural History Service, data collector, who manned that station and put in the data as it was coming in that day, or took the sheets. It took 3 months to get all of the data inputted. So our event was finished in late June, and it wasn't until almost October before we had a final number for the actual event. So we had over 1,300 species of animals. Allerton's BioBlitz, which they were doing comparisons, we won't find anywhere near as much as Allerton. And Allerton's also a much larger space. Allerton had over 1,500 species. So for a little teeny piece of property that had been severely abused, we were pleased with the number of species we had. Because of the time of year, the invertebrates were a large number of what we collected, and then plants following that. You'll notice that we had no reptiles on the list. Again, that 99-degree day had those reptiles hiding down into the ground trying to stay cool. We did have one state record. They found a plant hopper. I'm not even going to pretend to try to pronounce its species, genus and species. It had not been recorded in the state before, and what they found was the nymph, and this is what the adult looks like. Here's some pictures from that BioBlitz. There they are seining the creek. The water level was conveniently low, and they walked down all the way from the bridge below Crystal Lake Pool, past the bridge into the woods, seining to see what they can find. We were fortunate to have, we had just finished building the boardwalk trail in Busey Woods, so this event was part of a celebration of that trail opening, and along the trail there was a pair of cecropian moths breeding for most of the day on that first day. Everybody that hiked in the woods was able to see it. The two pictures of the scientists was one of my personal goals. I wanted to see these scientists engage with each other and engage with the public. It was really fun to have somebody sitting in the room looking in their microscope and finding something they weren't expected and yelling it out and having everybody in the room run over and look and share in that excitement. There's a lot of that reason why these people became the scientists they are, is to go out and find what the world has to offer. And then the other picture is one of our herpetologists who had been out looking for frogs and sharing his experience while he was out there. Here we have Ed DeWalt, who was doing the invertebrates, and he was the one that found that state record species. And then we also, besides the scientists going out in that 24-hour period of time, we had public programs where scientists and staff provided topical interchanges with the public that allowed them to go out and look for birds or mammals or specific kinds of plants. I remember when I went out to take pictures, the plant people were looking at trees, and literally the scientist was rattling off them as he was passing them. And students that he brought with him were madly writing them, and the public was, just enjoying listening to what he knew about those plants that he was seeing. For the 2019 BioBlitz, which was September 27th to 28th this past year, this was part of the celebration for the Anita Purvis Nature Center in the Urbana Park District. The Nature Center turned 40 in 2019, and as that, we brought back 40 programs and events from the past, one for each year, and that included a list of events that are listed here, with the BioBlitz being the second to last of our events. All of these were free. All of them sought ways to engage in a variety. It happened, didn't we? And the BioBlitz was a culmination of our beginning of our fall season for the event. So here's a timeline. It's certainly not detailed out. If you're more interested later, you can reach out to me and I can walk you through what this process was. Again, we started a year ahead of time with an interest survey that went out to all the scientists that had participated in the past, and scientists that they recommended, as well as scientists that were new to the area. We had, in that 15-year period, we had a lot of people had retired, and so we had to find new scientists in those disciplines. We asked in that survey what type of, if they were interested in helping with the BioBlitz, if they were interested in helping plan for the BioBlitz, and what would be a BioBlitz they would want to have. What time of year was best for them? What type of length did they want? And from that, the three top months were May, June, and September. We already had a heavy schedule for May and June, and our experience before was scientists are really busy out in the field during that time. So we were reluctant, and we had already done June, and we decided to do a fall date to see what was at the end of the summer, going into the dormant period. And so we picked a date of September. During the late fall, we wrote grants and sought funding sources, and we delegated to the Park District staff tasks for planning for the event. In January, we did an invite for a planning team, all those people that had said they were interested in the survey. We invited them, and they brought people. Some of them stick with us, some of them could not do it, but were willing to help out in other ways. We did some more funding source and donation requests as we were planning. February was mostly more planning and building scientist support. So this included contacting the heads of different departments, the state DNR office, trying to get them to encourage their scientists to participate with us. And then March through June was a lot more planning, was more contacting with scientists. We never stopped. We were constantly sending out emails or calling people to see if they would participate. And then we actively started looking for our team leaders. These team leaders would be in charge of the specific type of organisms that they would be looking for. So a plant team, an invertebrate team, a fish team, a crustacean team. These are people that we wanted to be experts, that they would then round up the other scientists together and work out the plan to go and search. In July, we did a trial run. iNaturalist was our medium that we were going to use to gather data about the BioBlitz, as opposed to doing paper sheets. We did have paper sheets available for those scientists that were still more comfortable with that. However, we wanted to give them a chance to come out and try the iNaturalist, and so I'll show you that data in a little bit. We continued to look for team leaders, and we began our media push for the event. In August, we started our active volunteer search, trying to figure out where volunteers would be beneficial at the most. One of the things that we learned from the 2005 BioBlitz was that scientists were felt that there were too many volunteers. They didn't know what to do with them. They didn't have a way to utilize them. Many of them brought their students instead. And so that was kind of a little bit of a frustrating thing to find out. So with this one, when we met and planned the event, several of those scientists were the same on the planning team from the 2005. And they said it would be nice to have people who would be helping us, but on a limited basis. And so I'll talk a little bit more about our volunteer use later. We had our final planning meetings. We started detailing out the site. We had a better idea of how many scientists might be there, where things might go in the rooms or around the nature center, and what kind of supply needs we were going to have. Specifically to feed everybody. Then in September, we had our final planning meeting. We had a meeting with volunteers. We reached out to team leaders, started breaking people up into those teams, eliciting the team leaders to coordinate them. We sent more details out to the scientists about where to meet, what to do, what to expect. And then of course we hosted the event. From October till now, we kept the iNaturalist page open until November because there were still scientists who were assessing their data. They took species back with them. This primarily is the invertebrates, and the mosses and liverworts group, they needed time to really evaluate what they had. So we were still inputting data until the end of October. We said our thank yous to our sponsors. We're still working on a report for the BioBlitz, and one of our funders was Clean Energy Illinois, and they require an exhibit on the BioBlitz to be developed, and so staff are currently working on that. So what did we find out? In late July, we offered 3 dates at different times where the volunteers and the scientists could come and try out iNaturalist. We did some training and could go out and observe what species they could find at that time. We had 13 observers make 115 observations with 65 species identified, and of those 65, we had 52 identifiers confirm those. So this is the part about iNaturalist I'll talk a little bit later about, but it has a means of making a observation an actual scientific record by having these identifiers. And then the day before the public BioBlitz, we hosted a citizen science school tour BioBlitz. This is where 62, 3 classrooms of 4th graders from Booker T. Washington came to the Nature Center for a morning to learn about biodiversity and learn about data collection. They made over 300 observations, and this was funded through a grant through the Champaign County Audubon Society. The activities that they participated in, those 3 classrooms were divided up into 3 teams. Each team had an opportunity to learn about plant ID. They had an opportunity to do some prairie seed collection, learned about what would happen with those prairie seeds, and then they learned how to use the iNaturalist. We had a donation of about 12 or 15 tablets that they were able to, I think they're Apple tablets, that they would then go out and find plants and animals to identify. They made 100 or 1,600 actual observations. Those 300, some of those were just them posing pictures of their friends, because that's what 4th graders do. And they identified 698 species with 120 observers. And then the actual day. We started at noon for the event to begin. Scientists started showing up as early as 9 o'clock in the morning to get prepared. We had volunteers here early to get things set up as well. We had 79 scientists We were expecting about 90, so we had some people with last-minute conflicts, and then we had scientists show up that we didn't know were coming. We had 61 volunteers helping over the 24-hour period of time, and a total of 350 participants. The number was a little less than we would have wanted, but it, for whatever reason, we never know for those kind of things. But the people that came stayed and enjoyed. We offered 13 free programs that I'll show in a moment what those programs were. On that specific, for just those 24-hour period, we found 749 species. In iNaturalist, you can combine events and create a total. And so for the 3 events that we offered, the one with the trial in July, the one with the students the day before, and then the actual event, we found 884 combined species. One of the things that I have been working on since then is taking the 2005 database, which was collected in a different format than how it was on iNaturalist. So I had to do some jury rigging, but creating a database that looked at how many did we find that were unique to 2005, how many were 2019, and what was the combined total. And we're still kind of working through that. Because not everybody, especially in 2005, wrote down their species the same way. And so there are some discrepancies that we're still working through. So again, one of our goals was to engage the public with scientists. And up until about the beginning of September, despite the request for scientists to help with this, we had maybe 1 or 2 scheduled. And then in the last, literally the last week or so, they were hopping out of the box. They were all coming and saying, yes, I'd like to teach this, or yes, I'd like to do this. And so these were actual scientists. They were not the staff or volunteers. There were people that know their funguses or know their birds. And we, most of the activities took place outside, except for just a few that needed to be done inside. The World Beneath Your Feet, Jim Nardi, an entomologist at the University of Illinois, had done some soil collections, and then had microscopes in the basement of the Nature Center that people could see on a screen what he had found. And then the how to use a iNaturalist started off inside, and then they moved outside. And attendance was, people could sign up for these ahead of time, or on the day. We limited to 25 people per program, just so that the scientists weren't overwhelmed. I think the 2 most popular was the bat ID, and then the mist netting and bird banding was probably the 2 top attended. I think the mist netting ended up with an extra 20 or so people, because we had a group of volunteers show up that had not signed up to volunteer, so we didn't really have any place to put them. So we made them participants and sent them out, half of them to go see what the mist netting was about, and half of them how to use the iNaturalist. It was really interesting to see these U of I students. Most of them were international students who were finding out about an ecosystem they knew nothing about, because it wasn't the same as their homeland, and using a new app to do that. So here's what we found, our breakdown. We did actually get reptiles. Interestingly enough, they were all around the Nature Center, not in the woods. We did count the area that included to the east of the Nature Center, and some down into Crystal Lake Park. That was our boundaries for the BioBlitz. Again, not surprisingly, plants and insects were our highest numbers of what we found. And this was live. So as scientists were entering the data, we have a television screen in the lobby that we were able to hook the iNaturalist page onto, so people could see what was being entered as they were there. So that was kind of fun thing to be able to show people, because that was one of the complaints that we got from the public from the 2005 was they couldn't know what was really being found or what the numbers were. So here's some pictures from the event, looking for insects and bugs and other invertebrates in the evening with a light. We've got Carol Osberger doing, coming out of retirement and doing some plant ID for us. The plant team broke up into teams in the woods and took sections of the woods. Here's Ed DeWalt again, a little bit older than he was before, helping with a master naturalist you may all recognize. She was helping him record his data. And then again, we did seining. The water was about the same depth as it was before. Once again, Ed found some state records. We had 4 species of mayfly larvae found that had not been recorded in Illinois before. He was so excited about it that he came back the next week and checked again to validate his records, and then he sent students out to other streams like the Saline Branch throughout East Central Illinois and West Central Indiana. These animals were found in quiet waters with silty bottoms where there was a good layer of algae for them to feed off of. So our final BioBlitz we just completed. It was a CU backyard BioBlitz. It was held from May 1st through the 31st. It was we invited people through Champaign and surrounding counties to participate. We wanted people, since so many people were had to stay home, we wanted an activity that they could use in their own backyard. We divided it up into topics to mostly keep people engaged so they don't feel overwhelmed that they had to find everything all at once. And so our first week was plants. Our second week was birds, and that also coincided with the Champaign County Audubon Society's Birdathon, which the Urbana Park District staff and the Forest Preserve staff collaborate to count how many species we can find in our parks and preserves in that 1 week time, and we wanted to engage the public in that as well. Week 3 was invertebrates, and week 4 was mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. When I did the slide, this was where we were, but I think the number actually changed yesterday. We were finalizing it, but we had 17 observers, observed 373 incidences, and then found 203 species. Some of those species have been verified by identifiers again. There's a nice graphic that shows how the breakdown is. So, iNaturalist, how to use it, what is it, what does it do? It's a joint initiative between the California Academy of Science and the National Geographic. The National Geographic has some fabulous web pages on how to use iNaturalist and how it is used. That are geared toward teachers. They have a whole teachers page, so a school could do a BioBlitz and engage their classes in that. This tool is used, again, as I had mentioned earlier, to contribute to science. It's to provide data from around the world that scientists can use to know how is the ecosystems in our world going. What it can be used for on a personal level, it can be used to track the species that you see and find. So for example, for the backyard BioBlitz, I moved a year and a half ago to a new house and didn't know what I had in my yard. So I ran around my yard with my phone and took pictures of plants and figured out what's growing in my yard. It's a crowdsourced identification. So this is where, I'll give an example here too. I had a species of bird at my bird feeders that I wasn't quite sure what it was. iNaturalist said one thing, eBird said the same thing, gave me the same 3 options, but it still wasn't positive. I posted it and I had 4 different people tell me and confirm that this is what I thought it was. It was a house finch female. I was hoping it was a pine siskin, but no luck on that one. And those people helped confirm for me that what I really was seeing was what I thought it was. It gives you the ability to learn about nature. We here at the Nature Center have people come in when we're open, obviously, with things that they want to know what they are. And that what is it question is an intriguing one from an educational point of view, because yes, we want to know what things are, but even more importantly, we want to engage and share what we find. And iNaturalist allows you to do that. It creates useful data for scientists. It helps people become citizen scientists. And it has a whole section that we'll look at in a little bit about how to run a BioBlitz. So how to use, on our Park District's webpage, if you search for BioBlitz, it'll take you to our 2019 page. And on there, there's both a handout that's posted here and a link to a video about how to join a project. It's pretty easy to do. We'll take a look at that in just a minute, but this is a resource that will keep up and that you can use in the future if you are interested in how do I get in here? How do I use this? So we're gonna, at this point, we're gonna switch mediums. I'm going to use my phone. Let's see how we're doing at time. Oh, you know what? We're not gonna do that. We're gonna go ahead and take a look at the iNaturalist page. Let's see if I can do this. Let's try this again. Bear with me, folks. Make sure it's not the slot. Okay, so this is the iNaturalist page. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So when you, did it go or did it bounce back? Okay. This page, when you get onto the iNaturalist, about half of you said that you've used it. The website page, I don't find as useful for entering my data unless I'm doing a large entry and I already have an idea of what things are. I find the phone app is easier for that, but you would obviously log in if you have an account or sign up for it. It would take you to a page. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to sign in as the Nature Center. Hopefully our internet's working. Okay, so it brings up the Nature Center's page. I go to our dashboard and it shows observations that have been posted either by staff or by the public that have access to our projects. If you go up to the community, there's a tab for projects. And here it lists out some featured projects, some recent ones. You can do a search. So if you knew the name of, for example, the CU Backyard BioBlitz, which hopefully is still open. Yeah, there it is. So you just need to have some idea of what that name is. If you just put Backyard BioBlitz, it's going to give you hundreds of them around the country. So if we click on that, it opens up our page with all of our results. It shows you, we lost an observer. We had 17 when I did the slide and now we have 16. Our species count is a little down. I mentioned that we were still working on this. I know that when I was entering not just, this is one of those things you have to know about a project. If you've started to join if you've joined a project, whatever you're entering, unless you tell it it's not part of the project, it puts it in the project. And I was out at Funk's Grove taking pictures and identifying plants, and I don't certainly have all those plants in my backyard. So we had to fix those. So it shows you visuals of what people found. And then you can also look at, if you go back to the projects page, you can start a project by clicking here, and it'll show you, it'll tell you what you need to do. There's two types of projects you can create. One is a basic collection project. An umbrella project is similar to what we did with the BioBlitz, where we combined the trial, the student project, and the actual BioBlitz into one. So we took several different data sources and combined those. And then they give you a sample to look at, which is really beneficial. So you have a description, you have some kind of masthead for it. All of the pages have the stats information, which is where we got some of the graphics for ours. So you can see how many observations, how many species, how many identifications. Again, these are when people have made, have said, yes, it is what you are seeing, or no, it isn't what you are seeing. And then lots of pictures of what people are finding in those particular times. And then in the more section, if you go down to video tutorials, this is a really beneficial page. When we were designing this, we knew nothing about iNaturalist, and I'm still learning how to use this, this tool as well as other tools I'll talk about. But it will give you, all of these are video tutorials, but there's a whole BioBlitz section. What is a BioBlitz, how to get organized, and all these resources for you available. There's also the teacher guides that I talked about. So if you're working with classrooms, it gives you ideas of how teachers can use it and what resources are available for them as well. I'll show you the upload page. Again, this is a little clunky I find that using my app is better, but if I were to go to a picture, let's see if I can find one really quickly. No, not that one, other one. So if you look at Mr. Mystery Spider here, on your app, you can search for what it might be. I have not found this to be easy on the web page, but it shows you the pictures. If you're, this is, for example, some of the scientists sent me their data and I had to input it, and I would use this, these sources to be able to put the location in by GPS, any tags, or you can link whatever project that you had for it. So if we wanted this to be in the CU backyard, BioBlitz, assuming I can spell, it should find it. But again, I find the web page maybe a little clunky with that. So I'm going to shoot back to our PowerPoint.
I have an iNaturalist question for you.
Okay.
So one of the listeners says, is there a way to limit your view of observation projects, guides, maps, etc., to just your part of the world without having to search the whole world every time you use iNaturalist?
Yes, you can. If you're putting together a project, you can limit the boundaries. So for example, with the CU Backyard BioBlitz, we said which counties in Illinois were part of it. If you want to look, I think you can put in a location. Like when I was looking up what species were found for our BioBlitz, I would put in something like orb spider, Urbana, Illinois, and it would only show me for Urbana, Illinois, if there was any sightings of it. Does that answer that question?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so again, here are the pages that we looked at. Here again is the project page. The project page allows you to edit and change. We ended up redoing our page 3 or 4 times before we tweaked it the way we wanted to. And then the tutorial page, again, I can't say enough about how beneficial this is. They're really good videos that walk you through how to do, how to set up a project, or how to engage, or how to take, for example, we had scientists who were taking pictures with their camera, their digital camera, not their phone camera, and they wanted to be able to upload those. And there's a wonderful video that talks you through how to do that. especially if you want high quality pictures. And then there are other apps. iNaturalist is by no means the only one. The Audubon book is available as an app. I actually don't even take a book with me birding any longer. I've used the app so long that it's my major tool. The only drawback is if my Wi-Fi, if there's not a whole lot of Wi-Fi close by, that may be a little struggling. But I always write down what I'm finding as well. And then most of the birders that are big birders in the area that I know use eBirds. I'm just becoming familiar with eBirds. It's similar to iNaturalist, but only on birds. It will help you find out what you're finding. It's a good source of recording your lists of birds, and then it also shares that in a larger bird community as well to be a scientific and conservation resource for others. And then BirdNet, I just started using this app as well. My husband, who's new to birding, is always asking me what something is, especially if it's a bird call, and I am not very good with my bird calls. So you literally record the sounds, and you have to watch what the bandwidth is showing you, because you can select what part of that bandwidth you want to identify. And for example, I did this the other day. There was a bird calling in our yard. I was pretty sure what I knew what it was, but I wanted to make sure. And there was a dog barking next door. And it did say that there was some background sound, but here's a possibility, and they were right with what the bird was. So that was pretty encouraging. And then Merlin, which is out of the Cornell Ornithology, their ID for birding is very, very helpful. It asks 3 simple questions to help you target in on what it could be, and it gives you possible matches. Again, I used Merlin and iNaturalist to identify that house sparrow female at my bird feeders that I got a blurry picture of. And then last, PlantNet is similar to these Merlin and iNaturalist in that you take a picture of a plant, and using a database from around the world, they help you try to identify what that plant could be. So all of these are, there's a whole slew of apps out there. I always recommend to people, if you're interested in them, download them and try them. For example, I was trying to find an app to do my garden map, and that was free because I don't want to spend money on it. And I must have downloaded 5 or 6 different apps and didn't like any of them and deleted them all after I had tried them out, and then finally found one that is kind of clunky but still works to what I want it to be. So if you don't like BirdNet, you can always take it off your phone. Okay, so what did we learn? We learned that Busey Woods is a pretty diverse area, and that the management strategies that we've been employing are making it more diverse and more ecologically sound. What we learned about doing the BioBlitz is to plan early and to plan often. This is not something that you start and then, wait a couple weeks and start working again, and then let it go for a month or 2, and then, here it is a week before the event and you're slamming it together. There was a lot of contact, a lot of reaching out, especially with the scientists, trying to get them to commit or to say yes or no. I have 2 databases of scientists from who said yes to who I never heard from for whatever reason. They're very busy people in it, and just getting them to volunteer their time for this is a blessing. So the volunteers. For the 2019 BioBlitz, we just did not utilize our volunteers to our best ability. I can only write it up for is that we were using the recommendations from scientists from 2005's report too much to the law. We really took to heart that they felt frustrated having all these extra people around in 2005. And so we tried to limit that, and we just didn't do a good job of it. And so if you volunteered for the event, I apologize. Some volunteers were able to find a niche for themselves and really, really were helpful, as you saw with Ed DeWalt in his entry. He was on he helped out with the planning of both events, and he was very reluctant about iNaturalist. He wanted paper, he wanted to do it his way, and we put a volunteer with him, and she helped him take the data down. We had another volunteer who was strictly at the computers, who was taking people's taking their specimens and taking pictures of them and uploading them to iNaturalist, and that is how he found one of his new species for the state. And he was very excited about it. It was really fun seeing how excited he was during the event. We wanted to find more ways to engage the public, especially with iNaturalist. It does allow the public to go out and take research, and we were somewhat limiting on that. And so if we were to do another one, I would want to do one that really does utilize the public and gives them the opportunity to work side by side with the scientists much more. And then just to remember that everything takes longer than you think. Here I thought I could get these scientists to sign on board and have things in place by June, and it was a week before the event, and I still had people telling me yes or no. And then on the event, we had people come that we didn't know were coming. And so we just had to, really punt and work with that. And then most importantly, have fun with it. The thing I learned between the 2005 and the 2019 was in the 2005, I was really constricted on where I could be because I was coordinating the event. And with this last one, I made a concerted effort to get out and see all parts of the event, make sure that we were documenting it, and make sure that everybody, all the scientists were having the needs they needed, that the things were rolling well in the woods. We had some technical issues right at the beginning. So when you use an app, you have to have Wi-Fi nearby, and we did have some hotspots that we placed out in the woods so that people could upload their data, but most of them had to wait till they took their pictures, and then they would come back, and then it would upload when they came back to the nature center, and that was something that was a little problematic right at the beginning of it. And then one last little comment I'd like to make. I've been with the Park District for a long time, and so Busey Woods has a special place in my heart because I use it as a tool, and I use it as a place to reflect about the world. And one of our first missions or wants for the 2005 BioBlitz was to bring scientists into the woods to see what the value was. And so this quote is something that one of the botanists shared with us, and he said, in particular, the wetland near the south boundary shows excellent native character and provides valuable and much needed habitat for many native plants and animals. This area of Busey Woods is valuable not only for the plants and animals, but it is a tremendous resource and refuge for the Champaign-Urbana community. So that's the other thing that happened besides the scientist comment was the scientists that had come from the university in the 70s to evaluate whether or not Busey Woods was of value for their ecological study, and who went back to the trustees and said, no, it was pretty damaged. He was at the 2005 BioBlitz. He had not been back to Busey Woods since then, and had an opportunity to do the research on during the BioBlitz. And he came to me and he said to me, oh my gosh, this is a totally different ecosystem than it was in 1974, and what value it has now. And so that was a benefit that we hoped would happen, and when it did, it was very heartwarming for all the volunteers that have helped take care of this piece of property. With that, I'll take some questions, and my contact information is there. I'm more than willing to share with people our experience more depth. If you're planning on doing a BioBlitz or participating in one, I can't say I know everything, but I know lessons that we've learned and things that I would do differently from learning from the other two BioBlitzes. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing at this point.
Thanks a lot, Judy, for the excellent presentation. So thanks for sharing all the work behind the BioBlitz. And so it's a beautiful project, but a lot of work. Any ideas about doing it again?
Well, we've always wanted to do one at Meadowbrook. We've done some plant studies of Meadowbrook, but we've never done an actual survey of all the species. And a couple reasons why we didn't do it this time. One, the park is in a transition right now. There are several projects that are still in action that we want to give time to finish and settle. So for example, the Douglas Creek project had only been finished for a year or so, and we were still allowing those plants to grow and things to kind of become what they are. The sculpture trail is going to be going through some transition soon, and the Hickman Wildflower Trail had also recently gone through a revegetation, and so we just didn't think it would be a viable tool at this point. We wanted things to be kind of set and then go back. The other thing is technology needs care. And so in the 2005 BioBlitz, the 99 degrees was a problem if we were outside. You wouldn't have been able to use the computers in that way. The scientists wouldn't have had a controlled setting to be able to look at their data. And we actually, for the 2019, had rain for part of the event, but we had indoor space for people that was comfortable. And we did set up a tent for food. But Meadowbrook, the pavilions are okay, and the Meadowbrook Interpretive Center has limited space. So we just haven't quite figured out how we would do that, but that would be, I think, our next place that we would do a BioBlitz in the future, is Meadowbrook, just to get an idea of what's really there in that park.
Very good. So a Busey Woods question. We were asked, why hasn't the rubble been removed from Busey Woods?
So that's a good question. We have a team of volunteers that sit on our management team. And back in the 90s, when we were finally able to put together a management plan for the woods, the rubble came up as a question. And we have removed some, primarily in the south half of the woods, along the fairgrounds. We took quite a bit out there. But the area in the center of the woods, especially where that staircase going nowhere is, there's two reasons why we have kept it. One, to remove that from the woods would be like opening a wound. It would take machinery to remove it out of the woods, and that could damage already existing new ecosystems. Two, there's an ecosystem that's developed there and that is utilizing that. And when we do programs with our school kids, we stop and we talk about what happened here. Why is this here? We have the kids do some hypothesizing. They all think a tornado came and ripped down a house. And we talk about how people make decisions to do something and what the cause and effect is. And then what do they see now? What do they observe happening? And what would happen if we removed it? So we use it as an educational tool. Just a reminder that sometimes as humans, we do things that have a cause and effect that is not necessarily good for the environment, but left alone, the environment finds a way of healing itself.
Very good. So someone said, I heard you can share sound on iNaturalist for birds and frogs only on the desktop version, not on the app. Do you know about that?
That is true. I believe I tried to, well, no, I saved a sound, but it did not identify it. So, and that's all new to me because I just found that new BirdNet that allows me to record sounds. But I believe that's probably true.
Related, how do you record sound only? If you've been only using video, how do you record sound only?
Oh, I don't know.
I know that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So most phones have a voice memo app, which would record only the sound. So I think that's how you do it, unless there was another app that did that.
Yeah, well, or the BirdNet one, which does just do bird calls. You just literally just push the button and it'll do it. But that's true. I've used audio when I was doing the frogs in Busey Woods a couple weeks ago. But I haven't singled it out specifically where BirdNet will allow you to do it. I have not used that app long enough to find out, other than I can download from it. I haven't seen how I can capture it and use it elsewhere yet.
We're also going to hear more about the use of iNaturalist through a presentation by Melissa Records in August. So watch the newsletter for that.
I'll have to sit in on that one too.
Let's see. Have you used the guides function on iNaturalist? If so, is it possible to put your own photos in the guide rather than the stock photos? She says you would like to have an illustrated guide of species for a particular preserve.
Oh, I don't know. I have not investigated that, but there is in the web version, you can do a search for something like that, and it'll if they have a tutorial for something like that, it would pop up. But that would be a really interesting thing to do.
So the BioBlitz's data would be great for understanding changes over time with climate change. Of course, that would be best done on a regular basis at a regular time or something like that, but it's a lot of work to do it. So maybe with apps that will make it more reasonable to approach doing it like that, but that's a thought.
It is. I know that there's a nature center in Michigan, Chippewa Nature Center, that does an annual BioBlitz. At least they had been. I haven't checked if they've done that recently. But they were using that for exactly that reason, to do some study over a long term.
Yeah.
And I've talked to that staff a few times and have asked, how have you gotten the commitment from the scientists from year to year? A lot of it is building family, is building people who make connections to what it is you're doing.
Right.
And the other response was they feed the scientists really, really well.
Excellent. That's all the questions we have. So thank you very much,
Great.
Judy.
Thank you for having me. And again, reach out if you guys have additional questions. I've really enjoyed talking with you guys today.
Very good. Thank you.